Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, why didn't you tell the truth? Why didn't you just tell the truth about the Feeding Our Future program? This program, my understanding, received $3 million the first year. Within a couple years was getting $200 million of taxpayer money. Whistleblowers raised concerns. As the chairman said, auditors raised concerns. Everybody raised concerns. March 30th, 2021, the payments are stopped. And a little over a month later, the payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about?
If you thought politicians could just blame the courts and walk away, think again. Jim Jordan just walked into that hearing with cold, hard evidence and looked Tim Walz straight in the eye, accusing him of fraud to his face. What happened next wasn't politics as usual. It was a full-blown reckoning. Stay with me because this exchange changes everything.
Recognizes the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, why didn't you tell the truth? Why didn't you just tell the truth about the Feeding Our Future program? This program, my understanding, received $3 million the first year. Within a couple years was getting $200 million of taxpayer money. Whistleblowers raised concerns. As the chairman said, auditors raised concerns. Everybody raised concerns. March 30th, 2021, the payments are stopped. And a little over a month later, the payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
Well, Chairman, we did tell you. And Feeding Our Future grew because of the pandemic. And
I didn't ask that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments? The payments stopped because there were concerns, obviously. It wouldn't stop the payments. Then they're restarted a month later. What was the reason for restarting the payments?
My understanding was the agency believed that the court had required them to make those payments.
And that was false, wasn't it? You repeated that. You said that, didn't you? You said that's why the reason. You said the reason you restarted is because the court ordered you to do so. Is that right?
I don't believe that is settled yet, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I think it is, because the court did something that I don't know if I've ever seen it. They issued a statement saying you were wrong in what you were saying. This is from the court. It says, Feeding Our Future versus Minnesota Department of Education, correcting reports and statements by Governor Tim Walz concerning orders issued by the court. Here's what the judge says. Governor Tim Walz told the media that the Minnesota Department of Education attempted in payments to FOF because of possible fraud, but that Judge Guthman ordered payments to continue in April 2021. Next sentence. That is false. So you said something that wasn't true. He further states this, Judge Guthman, the court says this, Judge Guthman never ordered the Department of Education to resume payments to Feeding Our Future in April 2021 or at any other time. So I want to know, why didn't you tell the truth?
Congressman, the attorneys at the Department of Education interpreted that differently. Both of those judges are no longer on the bench, and I think that interpretation.
The very first sentence. The first 7 words. This is not some unnamed source talking to the New York Times. This is not some anonymous source talking to whatever your Minnesota Star Tribune or whatever your paper is. This is the court speaking. First sentence, first 7 words. Due to inaccurate statements by the governor, Ramsey County District Court judge has issued and authorized this following news release. That's pretty straightforward. So the court's lying?
I can't tell you, Congressman, but the interpretation
somebody's lying. Somebody's lying, because you can't say the court ordered you to restart the payments, and then the court says we didn't order you to restart the payments. So either you're lying or the court's lying. And I'm just asking you, which one is it?
I just simply know what the attorneys at the agency believed, that it was a misinterpretation. And I would note that those payments.
Could it be you were trying to hide behind the court, Governor? Could that maybe be the reason why you issued the statements you did and why the court had to do something you never see done before? They issue a press statement saying you're wrong. The governor is wrong. His statement is, their words, not mine, false. Could that be the reason?
That was not the interpretation of the attorneys. And you know, court work, you can appeal those, Congressman, as you well know. I'm sure.
Is it all about politics, Governor?
No, it's about taking care of our people, which Minnesota does better than anyone else.
$3 million. The behavioral intervention program went from $3 million to $400 million in 5 years. The housing stabilization went from $2.6 million to $104 million. The integrated community supports went from $4.6 million to $170 million in 3 years. And this is unbelievable what's happening, and you're trying to hide behind some pretend court order, some court order that didn't exist. Governor, who's Casey Magan?
I don't know who Casey Magan is.
Well, I'll tell you. Mr. Magan is a Somali American and a fraud investigator in the guy beside you's office, in the Attorney General's office. And here's what he said. There was a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc. Did that have anything to do with this whole fraud scheme that went on in your state, Governor?
It did not, Congressman.
Did not. So you're saying Mr. Casey Magan is lying too?
I'm not.
You're the only one telling the truth in the whole state. Mr. Magan, who's a fraud investigator at the Attorney General's office, says it's politics. The court said
I couldn't speak for Mr. Magan. You asked me a question.
I know. I'm asking.
And I said no when you asked me the question.
I'm saying Casey Magan said just the opposite.
I don't know.
So the court's wrong and Casey Magan's wrong. You're the only guy right. How many people have been indicted in your state right now? Do you know, Governor?
I don't have those numbers with me.
You don't? 98 people have been indicted. You happen to know how many are Somali American?
I don't. We don't investigate or prosecute people based on ethnicity, religion.
Neither do I. We shouldn't do that. But Mr. Magan is a Somali American who just said that the court, one of the concerns was this is a core voting bloc. And I just want to know if you know how many of the 98 people who have been indicted in your state are Somali.
I don't. Their ethnicity is not my concern.
85% of the people indicted were Somali American, key voting bloc. And I think that's what drove this whole thing. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you believe in accountability, transparency, and the rule of law, you are going to want to watch this entire breakdown. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss when we expose what the mainstream media refuses to cover. This channel is about truth, facts, and defending this great nation from corruption wherever it hides. What we witnessed in this hearing was nothing short of a political earthquake. Jim Jordan came prepared. Not with talking points, not with spin, but with receipts. And when you bring receipts, the truth has a way of cornering people who thought they could skate by with vague answers and legal word games. The focus was the Feeding Our Future program in Minnesota. What started as a program receiving around $3 million exploded to roughly $200 million in just a few short years. Let that sink in. 200 million taxpayer dollars. At the same time, whistleblowers were raising concerns. Auditors were raising concerns. Red flags were everywhere. Payments were stopped in March of 2021 because of suspected fraud. That alone tells you there were serious issues. But then, just over a month later, payments were restarted. That is the key question Jim Jordan zeroed in on. Why restart payments when fraud concerns were already on the table? Governor Tim Walz claimed the reason payments resumed was because a court ordered it. That was his public explanation. But Jordan did what real oversight looks like. He brought the court's own written statement. And according to that statement, the court explicitly said Walz's claim was false. Not unclear. Not misinterpreted. False. Think about how serious that is. It is rare for a court to issue a public correction calling out a sitting governor's statement. Courts do not typically enter political debates. But in this case, the judge reportedly clarified that he never ordered payments to resume. That is not a minor discrepancy. That is a direct contradiction. Walz's defense was that attorneys at the agency interpreted the order differently. But here is the problem. When you are the governor of a state and you tell the public that a court forced your hand, you better be absolutely certain that is true. You do not get to casually shift blame to a court and then shrug when the court itself says you were wrong. Jordan pressed him hard. Either the court is lying or you are. Those were essentially the two options laid out. And instead of a clear answer, we got deflection. We got talk about interpretations. We got talk about appeals. But we did not get a direct admission that the original statement was wrong. As a right-wing patriot, here is what stands out to me. This is exactly why oversight matters. Government programs balloon in size. Bureaucracies grow. Money flows out the door at record speed. And when someone asks basic questions about where that money went and why safeguards failed, suddenly it is politics. The numbers alone are staggering. Jordan also cited other programs that skyrocketed in funding over just a few years. When government spending multiplies that fast, fraud risk multiplies with it. That is not partisan. That is common sense. Then came another layer. A fraud investigator in the Minnesota Attorney General's office reportedly suggested there was concern about political backlash from a key voting bloc if the issue was handled aggressively. If that is even partially true, it is deeply troubling. Law enforcement and fraud investigations should never be influenced by political calculations. Ever. Now, to be clear, crimes are committed by individuals, not communities. No one should be investigated or prosecuted based on ethnicity. That is a foundational American principle. But when political considerations enter the conversation about whether to pursue fraud aggressively, that is a red flag for every taxpayer in this country. 98 people have reportedly been indicted in connection with this scandal. That is not a small clerical error. That is not a paperwork mix-up. That is a massive breakdown in oversight and accountability. What Jim Jordan did in that hearing was what Congress is supposed to do. Ask direct questions. Demand clear answers. Confront contradictions with documented evidence. Whether you like Jordan or not,